Hey everyone, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. I'm Greg Nettle. I serve as president of Stadia Church Planting, where we want to help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation. On this episode of the Church Planting Podcast, we have, I've known Andy Sikora, it seems like forever. I was just in Patagonia with him for a couple of weeks, and I said, I've got to have you on the Church Planting Podcast. He has wisdom beyond his years. He's a church planter. He's a multiplier, sending out and planter after planter after planter, has residencies constantly. You're going to have a great time listening to Andy Sikora from Cleveland, Ohio, planter of Renew Community Church. Thanks for being with us today on the Church Planting Podcast. Well, I have my dear friend, Andy Sikora, with me here today. Andy is a church planter. He's a climbing companion of mine. Andy, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. I'm really excited to be on the podcast.
Andy, we just got back. We were in Patagonia together 2 weeks ago, bro. How was the trip for you?
It was an incredible trip. I was just talking to a friend literally right before we did this, telling him about the adventures and what we were doing. It was an incredible trip and challenging, fun. It was awesome.
And we raised a bunch of money for church planting.
Absolutely. So I also just got a donation right when we started this too. Like I thought I was done and somebody just gave. So I'm happy to see it.
Man. Yeah, you're never done, man. We keep going at this. It's Andy, you're one of the reasons why, I've known you for, it seems like forever, but I moved to Cleveland 4 years ago. You've been in Cleveland longer than that, though, as a church planter. What brought you to Cleveland?
Yeah, so we, very young in ministry, had worked at a church plant over in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It was the first job I ever had, but at first I didn't get paid because it was a church plant, you know?
Of course.
And then about 3 years into that, we moved over to Cleveland to work with a young adult ministry at a church called Patagonia Valley Church. And that church had been around for... when I got there, probably just under 20 years, I think. And their lead pastor is a guy named Rick Duncan, Southern Baptist, had moved up from the South to plant Patagonia Valley Church in the maybe early 90s and just had a heart for church planting, wanted to be a kingdom-minded church planter too. Like he would go across denominational boundaries. He wanted to see the kingdom come here in Cleveland. And so I got to work with him, go through all sorts of good stuff and bad stuff. But really felt this like burden to plant a church in the community where we were living, which is a suburb called Berea. And I can tell you about that if you want later. So we moved here in 2005. We planted our church in 2011. And so we're almost 15 years old now. Our church is called Renew Communities.
And I just preached at Renew on Father's Day this year, man. And it was just such an honor and joy for me because I got to go see this thriving, growing, and multiplying. And I don't know if you should be called a church plant. You're always a church plant. But,
that's right.
It was just so rewarding and refreshing to see what an amazing thing God is doing there. Andy, talk about what are some of the things you've learned in church planting? Like you're looking back now, 13 years ago. A lot of our listeners are just now getting in the church planting game, if you will, or business, or whatever we want to call it, ministry. What are some things as you look back, you go, man, I've learned this along the way?
Yeah. Well, part of the way I've been reflecting lately, because we just sent out a church planter from our church named Kevin, who planted a church called CrossFields. They just launched about a couple weeks ago. And so like, as you're helping somebody take those steps, you're thinking about your steps, right? And kind of how you're still here when others maybe didn't make it. And, part of that, I don't want to say luck because I do think it's God's, providence hand in it. But to a certain degree, sometimes it's like, the right conditions, those kind of things. So it's maybe not luck per se, like people talk about luck, but just right place, those kind of things, the way God provides. I would say some of the things that I picked up on is, perseverance is like the key. And maybe it's being dumb enough to keep going sometimes when it feels like you should quit, I talked about this on our kind of recap video from our Chile trip, but I've been a distance runner for 30 years almost now, and not a great distance runner, but I've run for a long time. And one of the things that stands out to me all the time is no matter how long the run is, if I'm running a 3-mile run, a 5-mile run, a 15-mile run, somewhere in that run, sometimes more than once in that run, I think wherever I'm at, like I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I just don't want to do this. But I'm 4 miles from home or 2 miles from home. So it's either I can do it quickly or I can do it slowly, but I can't stop. And I think that is that mindset. I think about this all the time, even in our 15 years in. There are times in the week where I think, I don't want to do this anymore. Whether it's a staff conversation that's challenging or an issue with someone in our church or maybe a financial thing we're facing. I just think, like, I don't want to do this. But I'm kind of 5 miles from home, so I have to keep going in this, And I think that has served us well. That's one thing. Second thing I'd say is, like, doing it with people, like people who are going to persevere with you, has been crucial. We had a couple named Chris and Bethany Salenchus who left the church to help us plant when we started. And so we had some pretty strong convictions. This is the kind of church we're going to be. We're not going to be that kind of church. I think most church planters have those kind of convictions, and they think they know what the right kind of church is going to be. But having somebody who's in the middle of it with you, especially in those early days when it would be easier to give up or things don't feel like they're trending the right direction. To have somebody else who's with you, either to say, we're not quitting when you want to, or we're not selling out the convictions that really brought us here when you want to, and vice versa. I think that's so persevering, doing it with people who are just as committed. And, I think those are like the two. And then the last thing I'd say is, like, hopefully what you're doing is something that you have, you feel like called to, like there's this supernatural, Jesus called me, the Holy Spirit's leading me. If I don't, I'll be disobedient kind of like convictions, because, when everything else is failing, it helped me to be able to go, well, God, this was your idea. You know what I mean? Like some of this was my idea. That stuff didn't work, but I didn't, this was your idea, God. And so if it's going to go, I need you to help me make it go, or you're going to need to fill me with the strength I need to persevere, whatever. And so that deep conviction of, like, I still believe the things we said when we told people we were going to plant about our church and our community right now.
Man, that's gold, all of it right there. Andy, the other thing that I noticed, so we're on this 2-week trip to Patagonia, and we're, I'm going to say it nicely. Some of us, I'm not talking about you, some of us were more seasoned leaders, been around a while more, and then some of you were younger. But one of the things I noticed about you was just watching you you'd sit in the back of the van with some of these guys and you'd be asking questions, and it was just your kind of hunger to continue to learn. Can you talk about that a little bit and why that's so important?
Yeah, I think that ultimately part of it is maybe just the way I'm wired is like I'm a problem solver, or I think I'm an analytical person. Like and sometimes that's a strength. Sometimes it can be a weakness, right? Kind of like you circle things that you don't need to. You should kind of get over and get going. But I do think that there's just always something to learn from the people around me, and there's always opportunities to get a new, fresh idea, even from people who've, I don't want to say failed, but maybe they haven't. None of the guys on our trip are like that. But even people who hadn't made it, or who the plan didn't play out the way they thought it would. Like, there are fresh ideas, new ideas, even fresh ways that you take something and apply it in your space. And so for me, like, I'm curious. There's a woman on our trip, right? And she was celebrating her birthday, and one of the tour guides had said, hey, we want to get her favorite cake. What is it? I'm like, dude, I don't know, but I'll find out, right? And so when she came in, I asked the question, I'm like, hey, if you were at home on your birthday, what would you be doing? Two other people around us go, that's a great question. I wish I asked questions like that. And really, that's really what it is like, how do you get to know, not just like, oh, when's your birthday, but like what moves you on that day? And I think that's the same thing in your church, in your leadership, in your failure in leadership, whatever. Like, hey, what's beneath that? And then where is it in me as well?
So Nancy enjoyed an amazing attempt, I'll say, at a Boston cream pie cake.
Yeah, it was a good try for chili.
It was a good try for chili, yeah. I mean, she really appreciated the effort. Andy, you guys, and I'm not blowing smoke here. You're a force in Cleveland now. You've been here long enough that you're able to rally people and so forth. But you're pumping out now church planters. Like, you've got the DNA of church planting baked into Renew Community Church that you lead. And you're putting out, always have residents going on in your church for church planting. Talk about how you got that DNA baked in, because that's we all talk about it as church planters. We want to be reproducing leaders and churches and multipliers, but we know the stats. Very few churches multiply. How have you been able to bake that DNA and kind of get the movement going in your church?
Yeah, that's good. So I think the first thing is that, you said earlier, like, I don't know if you're like, when you're not a church planter anymore, like now you're a church plant, right? And I think part of it is I always want to live in the church planting ecosystem. So I want to hang out with you and hear about new churches that Stadia is investing in. I want to go to Exponential, even if I've heard every speaker there before, which I haven't. But even if I have, I want to go because you're in the ecosystem that reminds you multiplication is the key, right? Like reproduction is the key. And if you forget that, then it's just by nature, you're going to go into like addition survival mode, right? So one is just like living in the ecosystem so you don't forget it and there's accountability.
I call it keeping my fire white hot.
Yeah, right. And like, seeing the stats of our country or our communities, it's like, hey, our church is not huge, right? We have 600 people or something, which is big for some, but it's not like a mega church, right?
Yeah, it's a good sized church. Yeah.
But to go, okay, well, we are in a community that's like 10,000, and within like a 5-mile radius of us, there's 60,000 people. And I go 600 people and 60,000 people, like there's more work to be done, right? And then you think about greater Cleveland, there's more work to be done. So that's the one, is like stay in the ecosystem and recognize like the need is still there. The second thing is when we were first starting, we did not have resources to have residents. And so we looked for partners, right? And so we started a collective where other churches that were new or newish, some that were a little established, would invest together in the next leaders. So we have a Lakewood Vineyard Church. I'd say they average, like in attendance, maybe 100 to 125 on a Sunday. They started 2 weeks before COVID, so they've been through it over the years. But they just sent out a planter that was a resident for a year. He just planted down in Cuyahoga Falls.
Yep.
Had an incredible start, and they have another person on their team who's thinking about planting next year. And so you just think like, okay, well, how can they do that? Well, one is they have the multiplication mindset, but two, they have partners who are going to support that work together. So you don't always have to have the money to invest in the next thing. And then probably about 10 years in, I said to our elders, I'm like, hey, we got to go pro in this idea, right? Like it can't just be a hobby. It can't just be a partnership. Like we're going to need to write in $50,000 a year for a resident here. And we just have to do it. And they're like, well, who's the resident? I'm like, I don't know. I think if we had $50,000, we might be able to find one easier than if we don't have any money, right?
Exactly.
And so, we want to invest in that mindset. That simple reproduction has always been a value of our church, and we put it into our micro churches. Like we want you to be reproducing there too. So it's always been like living in our system. But there is a sense in which that if you multiply your micro churches, they're still part of your local church body. But sending out your best resources, your finances, people to go with these people, like that is the next level of that sacrifice. And I think so our elders got on board with that. And I will just say one other thing is, so we've been trying to recruit basically kind of like free agent planters, which has been good. They've come in and done some residency stuff with us, but we're going, how do we raise them up too? From the farm system mindset too. And we just started young adult residencies. So we have 2 young adult residents. One is working with youth. One is working on our kids. They're 22, 23 years old, hot, very passionate, high passion, low experience. And it's, we're excited about the 2-year journey we're on with them, and we hope to do this over and over with people. But also, they're bringing such passion to us. They've changed the dynamic of our team, so we benefit from them being in the space with us too.
Well, it's an amazing thing to watch, Andy, and talk more. Is it called Kingdom Collective? I think here in Cleveland. And so, how many churches are involved in that? And like, how much money really comes in for that to support, residencies and church planting?
That's great. So I would say we have 6 official partner churches in that, and maybe 7 if you now that we've started another church here. And we borrowed a lot of these ideas from New Thing, as they did local.
Yeah, I mean, they used to be networks. I guess I should say, yeah,
yeah, right. And they kind of gave us the framework for this. And so the ask for finances is that each church would give $5,000 a year. That we actually became a nonprofit in the state of Ohio, so we're able to kind of like have a bank account that we can have that shared, community purse and then distribute as it goes. I don't honestly, Greg, not everybody gives 5,000 because they're newer churches. So some of them maybe give 100 a month and some of them maybe give more than that. You know what I mean? And it goes into this account and then we together kind of decide when a person's ready to go out. So I say all the time that we're probably not going to be your biggest funder, but we are probably going to be your biggest supporters.
Yeah.
So
that's good
we had
word there, man.
2 churches go out this fall. One CrossFields, the other is Burning River Church down in Cuyahoga Falls, and we were able to give both of those planters over $12,000. And so you think that's pretty good for half of those churches that are in our collective are pretty new, 2-3 years old.
It's incredible. Andy, I gotta, I mean, everybody's thinking this. Tell me that Burning River Church is not named after the Cuyahoga River.
I think it is because Cuyahoga Falls and they meet right in the. But Josh Allen is his name, not the Bills quarterback. But I know. Josh Allen's got a great when you hear him talk about the name, you're like, oh, that's awesome, that's cool. So it's good. It's good.
That's fun.
I'll tell you what, Greg, he went back to some old school marketing stuff that you would like billboards and mailers, and he got all this traction. And you think and we have another friend who did mailers in the same way. And I thought, man, I thought it was all social media nowadays or what? And they were getting traction because what do you get in the mail anymore? You know what I mean? Or billboards, So it's been pretty interesting to see how they've played it out.
That's fascinating. So we maybe some of it's coming back around. Andy, when you've got a resident there at your church, how much time are you investing?
I think it's been different based on the resident, based on kind of where they're at and what they're investing in here at Renew. I would say our residents are involved in all of our lead team and team meetings. I treat them like they're a part of the team. So I want your feedback. Actually, it's been beautiful because both of the guys who have served as residents have this new perspective. They see things we don't because we've lived it so long. So they give a ton in those meetings that we are like, wow, that's great. We'd missed that or we're not seeing it. And then I meet with them at least once every 2 weeks for about 2 hours.
Okay.
So then, we're in and out, we're working on things together. And Kevin, who planted CrossFields, he left the team in May, but we get together still every 2 weeks for about 2 hours. So last Tuesday, he came over here. We went for a walk in the Metro Park and we came back to my office. He's got a list of, questions he's trying to work through. Everything from hey, in this situation, what would you do? Or what did you do about meeting in a school in this time to bigger picture, thinking about next year or, that kind of stuff.
Okay, Andy, I'm going to shift gears a little bit now on you. I mean, what an absolute joy. You had your wife, Marilee, on the trip with us to Patagonia. So the fascinating thing for me is I get to watch Andy and Marilee Sikora in high stress, high output situations while we're trekking through the mountains or horseback riding or mountain bike riding. And I mean, Mary, she goes by Mary. Mary is a rock star, right? She loves this kind of stuff. But I watched your marriage. You have a really good marriage. You're 15 years into a church plant. Any tips for our, listeners, viewers to go, hey, these are some of the things to watch for, maybe to invest in, to make sure your marriage family stays strong through this?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the first thing I'd say is every marriage is unique, right? And so it's important to always remember that God gave you the marriage you have, not somebody else's marriage. So if your marriage isn't like somebody else's, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It might be a good thing. You may not be able to live up to that marriage, or it might be a different kind of situation. My wife and I, we've been married. It's 23 years last July. We've had ups and downs in how we relate and know each other, but there's some things that I've just known about my wife is that she is a very independent person, and she does not want to, some people you give an expectation to, they will like rise to the expectation. You give an expectation to my wife, she will give you the cold shoulder and show you how she is not going to meet that. And not for any other reason other than like she is confident in who God has made her to be. And so I don't think she ever wanted to be a pastor's wife. She was okay with marrying me. You know what I mean? And so when we planted our church, I said to her like, hey, all I want you to be is you. And I want you to engage in our church like you would engage in any church we attend. And if you feel called to some sort of leadership, then you can do that. If you want to serve in some way, create things, that's great. And if you just want to like bring our kids on Sunday and, be whatever you want to do, whatever you sense God is calling you to, great. I'm okay with that. And I think that because of that, she doesn't feel pressure. I don't feel tension. Sometimes people go, oh, who's your wife? And I'm like, oh, you know my wife. They're like, no, we don't know your wife. We've never met your wife. And I'm like, no, you have. Let me show you a picture of her. And they're like, oh, she does check in every couple of weeks. If the kids, like, yeah, that's my wife. She helps you every couple of weeks. You just don't know that she's my wife, So I think that's like the biggest thing for us is that like, we've learned to like live together in a way that's unique to our marriage, And I think whatever's unique to your marriage is great. You should embrace that together. The other thing is like, I'm a very emotional person. Mary's a pretty steady person. I ride the ups and downs of circumstances. My wife is like pretty steady. Every now and then she's annoyed. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of her temperament. And so, because of that, I can bring a little bit home and talk about the challenges, and she can remind me that, hey, it's not that big a deal. Like, it's going to be okay. God has got this, or you're being a baby or whatever, and like, and we're able to kind of work that stuff through. And then, this is the last thing is like, we still like each other. And I think that's because we still spend a lot of fun time together. We still do think, and not everything we do is fun, but we have fun doing it. You know what I mean? Like right now we're driving kids to every sport we can. And, that kind of stuff could be really tedious, but I love when I get to go to my kid's flag football game with her and, chat on the sidelines. And, it's just like normal stuff. But, I think I wish that I had some great secrets, but I do think it's the normal stuff that they would tell you about marriage. Like, hey, work things out, talk it out. Don't be self-centered, die to yourself, all that kind of stuff. And don't make your wife or your spouse, if you're a female, don't make your spouse play a part in your church that they don't feel called to play. Don't make them perform some tasks that they don't feel like God made them for.
I mean, Andy, if I could just put up in a big billboard talking about billboards, man, something you've said today that I'm going, man, I wish I would have said that to my wife early in the days of our churches. All I want you to be is you, and who God created you to be, right? Because so often I think that when Julie, I had these other, no, you have to come to that, or you have to be this, and it did some damage along the way that I had to repair and rebuild and, make healthier. And so, man, if you haven't heard anything on this podcast, but all I want you to be is you. I mean, I think that's what God says to you, Andy. I think that's what God says to every person listening and to Greg Nettle, and wants us to be that. Okay, kind of as we, kind of wrap things up here, a lot of listeners are out there, and, Cleveland's not like, like if God calls you to San Diego, you're like, cool. If God calls you to Miami Beach, wow, that's a cool calling. And it's not any easier. Believe me, I've watched church plants. I mean, It's tough anywhere you go. But Cleveland, man, there's nothing sexy about it. What would you say? Because, there's God's calling. I am absolutely amazed when I go to our discovery events and I hear where God's calling people. Right. I'm going, really? Really? What would you say to those people where they think they're called and maybe the place isn't as sexy or fast growing, or it's out in the country, or who knows what, about going to a place like Cleveland, Ohio?
Yeah. Well, so I would just say that my immediate response is God calls us to a people. right? Not necessarily to a place. And so there are things that God puts on our heart that is, does not make sense on paper. But when you start to think about the individual, the person, the souls connected to that, the families you're encountering, it go, oh yeah, that's that, And so I even think like sometimes people will tell me, oh yeah, we want to go plant a church in that community. I go, yeah, that's cool. Why? And it's because they've always loved Denver or something, and not to put Denver in the spotlight, but you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, me too. Like, but like, who do you know there? Like, who are the people that you're called to? And I think right when we were getting ready to plant, I had two friends that had reached out to me and said, hey, would you think, like, I'm planting a church. I say this. They're like, hey, why don't you think about moving here to plant a church? One was in Chicago, one was in Dallas. And I think I like both of those cities a lot. I grew up a little bit in Dallas. My family lived in Chicago back then. And so there's a lot of like appeal to being in those places. But I'm like, I remember saying to my one friend, hey, like, unless God specifically says, go there, I'm gonna be with the people he has me. And honestly, when we moved to Cleveland in 2005, I didn't think that, Cleveland would be my home forever. And who knows, God has plans that I don't understand, but it's hard. My wife and I, we were just talking about like, maybe we won't live in the same house we live in right now, but we can't imagine moving away from here, And so I think it's part of like where God gives you the heart for the people. That's what I'd say.
Well, and it's also because Cleveland rocks. Let's be
for sure.
honest.
And listen, man, I hassle every single person I can about doing things in Cleveland. Your staff at Stadia, all of them have been hassled like, hey, why don't you bring this event to Cleveland? Do this thing in Cleveland. Talk to the guys at Exponential. When are we doing Exponential in Cleveland? I mean, what does Orlando have on Cleveland? You know what I mean?
Exactly. We've got the lake. Hey, and the burning river.
That's right.
And Andy, Stadia is having a discovery event, 2026. Everybody's going to be there, all the cool people.
Absolutely.
And so we are bringing it to Cleveland.
That's right.
Andy Sikora, you can all hear why I love this brother and love what he's doing. Thanks, Andy, for being on the Church Planting Podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Thanks for listening to the Church Planting Podcast. The Church Planting Podcast is part of the Stadia Podcast Network. To find more great episodes and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.